Around 5,300 years ago, a man died on a mountain pass in the Alps. He was murdered, an arrowhead in his left shoulder. His body froze in a glacier, where it lay for 53 centuries. The same ice that killed him preserved him. His body, his tools, his clothes, frozen in time. When scientists examined him, they found something they didn't expect, until two hikers found him in 1991. What archaeologists found with him was extraordinary. A complete outfit, a grass cloak over a coat of brown bear and deer hide, stitched together with sinew. The grass cloak was a rain layer. The hide coat was the insulation. The combination was calculated. The shoes alone represent centuries of accumulated knowledge about insulation. Leggings of goat skin, a loincloth of sheep hide, shoes stuffed with hay for insulation, a bearskin hat. The clothes were not primitive. They were engineered. Each garment was made from a different animal, selected for specific properties: waterproofing, insulation, flexibility, durability. Fudi Detsi didn't invent his wardrobe. He inherited it. Everything we know about Neolithic clothing comes from Funzas. He is the only complete record we have. 5,300 years old. The oldest complete outfit ever found. And it was already sophisticated. He inherited it from generations of accumulated knowledge. This is the history of clothing. Clothing is at least 170,000 years old. We know this not from fabric. Fabric doesn't survive that long. We know it from lice. Body lice need clothing to live. They can't survive on the skin alone. They need fabric to breed in. When body lice diverged from head lice, they were announcing the invention of clothing, indirectly, precisely. Body lice diverged from head lice as a distinct species approximately 170,000 years ago. The only reason body lice would speciate from head lice is if humans began providing a new habitat. Homo sapiens evolved in sub-Saharan Africa. We are tropical mammals, largely hairless, built for heat. As humans began migrating out of Africa into Europe and Central Asia, they encountered temperatures that should have killed them. Temperatures 40 degrees below what their bodies were designed for. Without fur, without clothing, dead. Fire and clothing. The two technologies that let a tropical mammal conquer cold climates. They didn't die, they sewed. The earliest sewing needles ever found date to approximately 61,000 years ago. In a cave in South Africa, made from bone, tiny, precise, and functional. Somebody sat down 61,000 years ago, bored a hole through a bone, and threaded it with sinew. That act made human migration into cold climates possible. Across the Bering Land Bridge into the Americas, 30,000 years ago, in hide clothing stitched with bone needles. The bone needle from Sibutu Cave is only slightly larger than a modern surgical needle. 61,000 years ago, it let humans colonize every continent on Earth. Without clothing, there is no human presence outside Africa. The cognitive load of making clothing in the ancient world was extraordinary. Killing, processing, scraping, softening, cutting, boring holes, stitching. 7 steps before a garment existed. Every one of these steps required planning, skill, and the ability to envision the final product. Clothing technology has always been transmitted, from parent to child, from guild to apprentice. The needle didn't fundamentally change for 60,000 years. Then it did, rapidly. Linen, woven plant fiber, appears in the record approximately 34,000 years ago, predating farming by thousands of years. The product came before the agriculture that would produce it at scale. Wool, the fiber that transformed the ancient world's textile economy, requires sheep. Sheep were the first animals domesticated, specifically for fiber rather than primarily for food. Someone noticed that some sheep were fluffier. Over thousands of years, they selected the fluffier sheep. Sheep were domesticated around 11,000 years ago, but the wool revolution required selective breeding. Early sheep had coarse outer hair and a soft inner fleece. By 6,000 years ago, the fleece dominated. Mesopotamian temples were essentially textile factories, employing thousands of women as weavers producing wool cloth for trade. The wool that went into those temples came from flocks managed across the entire agricultural hinterland. Wool cloth became the first internationally traded manufactured good, before spices, before metals. The medieval wool trade made fortunes and made wars. The Lord Chancellor of England still sits on the wool sack in the House of Lords today. The English economy from the 12th through the 15th century was financed largely by wool export. When Edward III needed to finance a war with France, he used English wool as collateral. The wool sack has sat in the House of Lords since 1362, stuffed with wool, still there. By the way, if you are following this series, this is the garment that made all the others survivable. Hit subscribe. Back to the story. The cotton revolution replaced wool in the 18th and 19th centuries. It did so on the back of two things: the spinning jenny and enslaved labor. The cotton gin of 1793 made processing raw cotton 50 times faster. The spinning jenny and the power loom mechanized weaving. But the cotton itself was grown by enslaved Africans. Cotton, a fiber that democratized clothing and the trade that powered its rise. From the plantation to the mill to the shop, the global supply chain of clothing was born in cotton. The Industrial Revolution in textile production was inseparable from the Atlantic slave trade. The fabric that democratized clothing was produced in a system of brutal forced labor. The geography of clothing production hasn't changed, only the country names. 330 million workers, more than the population of the United States. Today, fast fashion has created a version of democratized clothing with a different set of costs. A t-shirt that costs $5 is possible because someone somewhere earns less than a living wage to make it. The global garment industry employs approximately 330 million workers, most of them women, most of them in South Asia and Southeast Asia, most of them earning wages that do not meet the cost of living in their own countries. The garment that saved the human race from freezing is now the most complex supply chain on Earth. The same technology that saved humanity from freezing, now the technology that feeds a global economy on minimum wages. In 2013, the Rana Plaza factory collapse killed over 1,100 garment workers in Bangladesh. In Antarctica, a human being without the right clothing is dead in minutes. In the Sahara, without the right covering, dead in hours. On a cold night anywhere outside the tropics, clothing is still the technology that stands between us and the environment. We have not outgrown it. We have just forgotten that we depend on it. Clothing is the only human technology that is simultaneously survival tool, social signal, art form, and industrial product. Foisey wore a grass cloak and a hide coat. We wear synthetic insulation and Gore-Tex. The problem is identical. The body lice that first colonized clothing 170,000 years ago are still with us. We are still wearing clothes. We are still entirely dependent on what we put on our bodies. Every person visible from above, every single one clothed, all of them dependent on a technology as old as us. The nomadic peoples of Central Asia still wear the same wool, felt clothing they have worn for 3,000 years. The dell, the felt jur, the wool coat, the same answer to the same cold. Aerogel insulation, graphene composites, phase change materials. The engineering of Futsatsits's outfit continues. We have not outgrown the problem that clothing solves. We have just moved it indoors. Every morning, without thought, we solve the same problem Funsi solved on that mountain pass. The question clothing now asks is not whether we need it. It is whether we can make it fairly. The same agriculture that produced bread also produced wool, the two great ancient commodities, grain and cloth. No civilization in the ancient world survived on one without the other. Bread fed the body, wool clothed it. By Rome, clothing was already a marker of status. The dyed purple of senators, the plain white of common citizens. The survival function never disappeared, but the status function grew to compete with it. The designers of the 21st century are trying to answer a question that began in the cotton fields. Sea crossed this pass in engineered hide and grass. Hikers cross it today in engineered Gore-Tex and merino. If you learned something today, hit like and subscribe. Next week, the history of shoes. Until then, history is everywhere.